Have you ever stared at your dinner plate and just wondered? I mean, really wondered what's going on in there? Forget the taste for a second, forget the texture. What is your food actually made of? Right down at the molecular level. Think about it. What's the real difference between, say, a slice of bread, a knob of butter, and a handful of beans? On the surface, they're worlds apart, right? One's fluffy, one's fatty, and one is, well, it's a bean. But you know what? It turns out they've got way more in common than you might think. Because when you zoom all the way in, you find that pretty much all food is built from a surprisingly short list of molecular ingredients. We're talking about three main groups: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. You can think of them as the basic Lego bricks that build absolutely everything, from an apple to a steak. So in the next few minutes, we're going to meet these molecular building blocks. And then, and this is the fun part, we'll step into the lab to learn the simple chemical tests that let us play food detective and find out exactly what we're eating. Right then, first things first, before we can identify our culprits, we need to get to know them. Let's get properly acquainted with our three main suspects. First up, carbohydrates. We're carbs, as we all know them. These are basically your body's #1 fuel source. At their simplest, they're things like glucose. But when these little sugar units link up into massive long chains, they form complex carbs like starch, the stuff that makes potatoes and pasta so satisfying. Next on the list, we've got proteins. Now, if carbs are the fuel, then proteins are the builders. They are made from about 20 different types of amino acids, all strung together like different colored beads on a necklace. And the crazy thing is, the specific order of those beads creates thousands of different proteins, and every single one has a unique job to do in your body. And rounding out our trio, we have fats and oils, or lipids if you want to be technical. These molecules, made of fatty acids and glycerol, are absolute champions at storing energy for later. Plus, they keep us insulated and protect our vital organs. Yeah, pretty essential stuff. So we know our suspects, we know what they do, but how do we actually catch them in the act? How do we prove they're lurking in our lunch? Well, every good detective needs a kit, and ours is a brilliant set of simple yet incredibly powerful chemical tests. Now, before we start, there is one golden rule to this whole investigation. And it's all about color. For each test, the critical piece of evidence, the smoking gun, if you will, is a dramatic color change. That's the moment that screams, aha, gotcha. You need to know the starting color and the color it changes to. That's the whole game. Okay, lab coats on, goggles down. It is time to put our food samples to the test and see what secrets they're willing to give up. Let's kick things off with that big, complex carbohydrate, starch. You find it in things like bread, rice, and potatoes. So, how do we prove it's actually there? Well, this test is wonderfully straightforward. You just take a bit of your food sample, pop it in a test tube, and then add a few drops of iodine solution, which is a kind of brownie orange color to start with. And here it is, the moment of truth. If nothing happens and the solution stays that same brownie orange, then nope, no starch. But if starch is present, you get this incredible instant transformation. The whole thing turns a deep, inky blue-black. Absolutely unmistakable. Case closed. Right, suspect number 2. Let's hunt for the simpler carbs, what we call reducing sugars. Glucose is a classic example. Think sweet things, like fruit juice. Now, for this one, our chemical agent is called Benedict's solution, which starts out as a bright, clear blue. We add our sample to it, but this test has an extra step. It needs a bit of encouragement. We need to gently heat the mixture up in a water bath. And that heat is crucial. If after a few minutes your test tube is still blue, then your food is clear of reducing sugars. But if they are present, that blue will transform, going through green, yellow, and finally forming a cloudy, brick-red substance that settles at the bottom. That's your positive result, loud and clear. Okay, time to track down our builders, the proteins. And to find them, we're going to use something called the Biuret test. This is a two-step job, this one. First, you add some sodium hydroxide solution to your sample to make it alkaline. Then, you carefully add a few drops of a light blue liquid, which is copper 2-sulfate solution. And the result is, well, it's quite lovely, actually. If there's no protein, the solution just stays that pale blue color. But if protein is hiding in there, the chemicals react with it, and the whole mixture turns a beautiful, distinct purple, or maybe a lilac color. You can't miss it. Last but by no means least, let's hunt for those energy-dense fats and oils.
This one's called the emulsion test, and it works a little bit differently from the others. We're not looking for a color change this time.
So here's the trick. Fats don't dissolve in water, but they do dissolve in alcohol. So first, we take our sample and shake it up with some ethanol to dissolve any fat that's present. Then, we pour that ethanol mixture into a test tube of plain old water.
And this is where the magic happens. Because the fat can't stay dissolved in the water, it gets forced out. So if the solution stays perfectly clear, there's no fat. But if fat is present, it will instantly form a cloudy white layer called an emulsion. It looks just like milk, and it is undeniable proof that you found fat. So there we have it. We've used a bit of simple chemistry to unmask the molecules hiding in plain sight in our food. It's a fun bit of detective work, sure, but what's the bigger picture here? Why does any of this actually matter?
Well, the truth is, these simple tests, or at least more advanced versions of them, are the absolute bedrock of food science. They're used every single day by nutritionists to create balanced diets, by food companies to make sure their products are consistent, and even in medicine for diagnostics. But I think, most importantly, understanding this stuff empowers all of us. It lets you look at a nutrition label and know exactly what you're putting into your body. So next time you look at your dinner, I want you to think like a food detective. That potato, that bit of chicken, that drizzle of olive oil, you now know the molecular secrets that they are hiding. Which leaves me with just one final question for you. If you could grab any food from your kitchen right now and test it, what would you choose first? And what do you think you'd find?